What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Pack a Day podcast. I'm your host, Andy Herman. You can follow me on Twitter at Andy Herman NFL. Sometimes these episodes can be a little bit of a grind to put together. This one was really fun, and I'm really excited to go over it today. So I'm going to be talking about the best players in the NFC North that are age 25 and under. I'm actually going to build out a full 53-man roster using just the NFC North. Again, players 25 and under, because I wanted to take a look at the overall state of the NFC North, because we have four teams, in my opinion, that are in very different spots on their paths to trying to win a Super Bowl. Green Bay clearly trying to go all in to try to win a Super Bowl while Aaron Rodgers' window is still open. Minnesota definitely trying to compete. They have usually a ton of draft picks every year, but they are still clearly trying to re-sign Kirk Cousins and build around him and still trying to compete right now. There's not a sort of aggressive rebuild going on, so I would put them in the competitive category. You have the Chicago Bears, who, in my opinion, just sort of started their rebuild. They spent a lot of draft capital on Justin Fields, and prior to Fields, with the whole Nagy pace regime, they were still trying to sort of hang on by the last thread. And then, with the drafting of Fields, and then now with the new regime in, they're starting this rebuild process, right? And then you have the Detroit Lions, who are a couple years into a rebuild, but you have four teams that are, again, in my opinion, going in very different directions. From a Packers standpoint, in my opinion, clearly the Packers are the team. Like, if everyone was asked, bullet to their head, life on the line, which team from the NFC North this season would win a Super Bowl? And again, injuries can always impact everything, right? But I think if everyone was given that question today, if I told you one of the teams from the NFC North was going to win the Super Bowl this season, I think the vast majority of people would say the Green Bay Packers would be the team to win that Super Bowl. So they're in the win now, competing for a Super Bowl phase. I don't know that while Minnesota's competing, I would be fairly shocked if they ended up anywhere near the Super Bowl conversation. And meanwhile, the Lions and Bears much more towards that rebuilding phase. So the reason I want to look at this is because while Green Bay, and to a lesser extent, in my opinion, Minnesota, are in that trying to win now phase, you have two teams that are starting the rebuild, which would make me believe that Packers trying to win now, the other teams, specifically probably the Lions and the Bears, may be catching up or surpassing, or probably surpassing the Packers when it comes to young talent. They have a lot of picks that are very early in the draft, at least especially the Lions in this scenario. They've been doing this for a couple years now. So if you start looking at the Packer or the players 25 years and younger for all of these teams, I would expect Green Bay to start to get passed up when it comes to talent 25 and under. So that's why I wanted to look at this. Green Bay is competing now. The Bears and the Lions are more competing for the future, but how is Green Bay hanging in there when it comes to talent 25 and under? My assumption going in would be that probably Detroit was going to be in the lead when it came to players 25 and under, especially as we start building out this 53-man roster. Now, before we get to the rest of the 53, right, I want to go over the state of the quarterback position, because clearly this is the most important aspect for this division moving forward. As we start looking 3, 4, 5 years ahead, what is the state of the quarterback position in this division? Aaron Rodgers will clearly be done by that time, but could be done any year now. This could be his last year. It could be next year. It could be the following year. But in all likelihood, that time is coming to an end sooner rather than later. You have Jordan Love as a developmental quarterback. The Bears have Justin Fields, who they went all in on with the Ryan Pace era. They very much do not seem all in on him right now. They're going to give him every opportunity to succeed, just without putting a bunch of talent around him. So we'll see if he can actually overcome that. The Lions have Jared Goff, but he seems more of a stopgap, and they have not found their long-term quarterback. I would assume that would be next year, but this Lions team looks just scrappy enough under Dan Campbell and with the players that they've assembled that they might be just a little bit too good to get one of those top seeds next year, which could actually be an issue and allow them not to get the quarterback that they really want. Meanwhile, the Vikings still have Kirk Cousins, And they have Kellen Mond, who they spent, I believe it was a third-round pick on, if memory serves. Mike Zimmer did not seem to like Kellen Mond at all. And Kellen Mond, up until this point, has not shown anything. You could say the same about Jordan Love. And to an extent, Justin Fields. Those are your three sort of 25 and under quarterbacks that, have some developmental potential, clearly some more than others. And Justin Fields would be, in my opinion, the top of that list at this time. But we simply don't know the state of this quarterback, or the division in the quarterback position a few years from now. Could be that Justin Fields is running the division, and that could be the case. Could be that Fields flops, could be that Love flops, could be that Kellen Mond is nothing to write home about, and the Lions have to go in an entirely different direction. And all of the starting quarterbacks 3 to 4 years from now in the NFC North are currently not in the NFC North. That could very well be the case. So that is going to be clearly the biggest thing to continue to keep an eye on in the division as we look ahead 3, 4, 5 years is the state of the quarterback position. The next thing that I wanted to look at are who are the top 10 overall players 25 and under in the division. And I just wanted to rank them 1 to 10. And you could mix these up in a variety of different ways. If there are Bears or Vikings or Lions fans that believe I could have ordered these a little bit different, I feel like a lot of these are very, very close, especially like 1, 2, and 3. And then I think you kind of get a group after that. And then there's even a handful of players that just were on the way out. If you want to order these in almost any direction, I'm not going to be too upset about it. But here's how I ordered the top 10. Number 1, Jair Alexander. And just a quick aside here. These are players 25 or under as of July 14th. I wasn't going to do a ton of research to see if they turned 26 on July 15th, and quite frankly, that doesn't matter all that much. So these were players 25 and under as of July 14th. So Jair Alexander, number 1 on my list in the division. Number 2, Justin Jefferson. To me, if you want to swap those and put Justin Jefferson on the top, I'm all for it. Justin Jefferson's a phenomenal player. Jair's coming off injury. So if you want to go in that direction, totally fine by me. I'm putting Jair 1, Jefferson 2. Rashawn Gary, I'm putting at number 3. Jalen Johnson, the Bears corner, at number 4. Aiden Hutchinson, I know he's a rookie, but if you were talking pure value and talent, I'm putting him at number 5. Roquan Smith at number 6. Penei Sewell, the Lions' first-round pick, offensive tackle, number 7. Christian Darrisaw, another offensive tackle for the Vikings, at number 8. TJ Hawkinson for the Lions at number 9. And Eric Stokes for the Packers at number 10. So quick recap. Jair Alexander, Justin Jefferson, Rashawn Gary, Jalen Johnson, Aiden Hutchinson, Roquan Smith, Penei Sewell, Christian Darrisaw, TJ Hawkinson, and Eric Stokes. Some honorable mentions here, who I think you could bump into this list if you wanted to. Amon-Ra St. Brown, he had a tremendous rookie season. Really excited to see what he can continue to do. He looked phenomenal a season ago. Darnell Mooney for the Bears. I still wonder if he projects as a number 1 long-term or just like a really good number 2. That remains to be seen, but I think you could make an argument for him. Jamison Williams, I think, is going to be phenomenal. I thought that was an amazing pick for the Lions. I think it would be a bit aggressive to put him in the top 10 players under 20 or 25 and under in the NFC North right now. But I think you could make an argument for it. David Montgomery for the Bears, A.J. Dillon for the Packers. I think there's a variety of players that you could add on this list, but that was my top 10 as I'm putting it out today. All right, let's take a look then at our 53-man roster. All right, so here was my overall 53-man roster. Some of these are tough decisions, and once again, there's going to be some opportunities to flip-flop some players here and there. I kept 2 quarterbacks, Justin Fields and Jordan Love. A lot of potential, not a lot of results as of yet. And this is going to be, as we talked about, a position that's going to be worth keeping a very huge eye on in the division for the foreseeable future. As of right now, it's, Jared Goff and Aaron Rodgers and Kirk Cousins and Justin Fields are the top 4. But under 25 and under, just basically Fields, Love. Maybe Kellen Mond gets in the conversation eventually. But I'm just going to Fields and Love on my team right now. At running back, David Montgomery for the Bears, A.J. Dillon for the Packers, Alexander Mattison for the Vikings, and DeAndre Swift for the Lions. So 4 good young running backs, 1 for each team. Wide receiver, I'm going Justin Jefferson for the Vikings, Darnell Mooney for the Bears, Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Lions, Jamison Williams for the Lions, DJ Chark for the Lions. Then you could go in a couple different directions. I kept 2 more receivers, so I kept 7 total. I did keep Christian Watson. I think his overall talent puts him ahead of the other receivers here. I also kept Quintez Cephas for the Lions. I think you could make an argument for Velus Jones for the Bears as well. I think you could make an argument for maybe only keeping 5 or 6 here, but I went with 7. Again, Justin Jefferson, Darnell Mooney, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamison Williams, DJ Chark, Christian Watson, and Quintez Cephas. At tight end, went TJ Hawkinson, Irv Smith Jr., and Cole Kmet. So 1 for the Lions, 1 for the Vikings, 1 for the Bears. Offensive tackle, Penei Sewell for the Lions, Christian Darrisaw for the Vikings, Larry Borum for the Bears, and Tevin Jenkins for the Bears. Jenkins hasn't done a ton yet, but that would be the 4 that I would go with as of right now. Offensive guard, I'm going with John Runyon Jr. for the Packers, Ezra Cleveland for the for the Vikings, Jonah Jackson for the Lions, and Ed Ingram, the Vikings' second-round pick, as the number 4 guard. For center, I'm going Josh Myers with the Packers, and then Sam Mustafar for the Bears. Defensive line is really weak. If you look at this division as a whole, 25 and under, you could start any of these 5, and you could almost cut any of these 5, and I wouldn't have a major argument with it. I'm going Devonte Wyatt, number 1, Packers first-round pick this year. I'm then going Aleem McNeil for the Detroit Lions, Armon Watts for the Vikings, TJ Slayton for the Packers, and Justin Jones for the Bears. Not a ton of talent. You could go Levi Onwuzurike for the Lions, who I loved coming out of college, but had a really rough rookie season. If you want to put him in there for almost any of the players that I just named, I think you could make an argument for it, but there's just not a ton of talent in this division at defensive line, 25 and under, and you could make an argument Devonte Wyatt's already the best one in the division. And clearly what he does this season will be a long way in determining that, but I think if any NFL GM could have any defensive lineman 25 or under in the division right now, they would take Devonte Wyatt number 1 overall. All right, edge rusher, Rashawn Gary for the Packers, Aiden Hutchinson for the Lions. That would be a really fun edge rusher combo. Josh Pascal for the Lions, Trevis Gibson for the Bears, and then Julian Okwara for the Lions. Inside linebacker, Roquan Smith for the Bears with Quay Walker for the Packers, Chris Barnes for the Packers, and then Blake Lynch for the Vikings. Corner is the one position of all the groups here. Wide receiver was pretty good, but corner is stacked. Jair Alexander for the Packers, Jalen Johnson for the Bears, Eric Stokes for the Packers, Kyler Gordon for the Bears, Cam Dantzler for the Vikings, and Andrew Booth for the Vikings as well. Didn't even have the opportunity to keep Jeff Okudah for the Lions, who had a really rough first season, then got hurt. So he could be another player that you keep here just based off of talent, but the corner group really, really deep here. Safety, Darnell Savage for the Packers, Luis Cine for the Vikings, who was their first-round pick this year, Jaquan Brisker for the Bears, their second-round pick, and then Cam Bynum, who had a really nice season last year for the Vikings. Riley Patterson at kicker for the Lions, Jack Fox at punter for the Lions, and then the Packers get Steven Wirtle or Jack Coco, take your pick, the only 2 long snappers in the division under the age of 25, so you can have your favorite Packers long snapper as your pick there. So before we jump into like how this broke down overall, let me just go over my starters, and I'm going to go 3 wide receivers, 3 corners, nickel defense, 11 offense is what I'm going here. So I'm going Justin Fields at quarterback, David Montgomery at running back, Justin Jefferson, Darnell Mooney, and Amon-Ra St. Brown at wide receiver, TJ Hawkinson at tight end, Penei Sewell and Christian Darrisaw at offensive tackle, John Runyon Jr. and Ezra Cleveland at guard, and Josh Myers at center. So those would be my starters on offense. My starters on defense, Devonte Wyatt and Aleem McNeil along the defensive line, Rashawn Gary and Aiden Hutchinson at edge, Roquan Smith and Quay Walker at inside linebacker, Jair Alexander, Jalen Johnson, and Eric Stokes at corner, Darnell Savage and Luis Cine at safety. So those are my starters on offense and defense. So when we break this all down, how does it break down overall for how many players are on each team? So overall players on the 53-man roster, the Lions were 14 players, the Packers had 14 players, the Bears had 13, and the Vikings had 12. So overall, very evenly matched roster when it came to Lions, Packers, Bears, and Vikings. And once again, there were a couple different ways that we could have gone with this. Like you could take a Quintez Cephas off, put a Velus Jones on, which would have put the Lions down to 13 and the Bears up to 14. You know, you could probably make an argument for Jeff Okudah and maybe taking off Quintez Cephas, I guess maybe even a Christian Watson, which would put an extra line and bring a Packer down. I think there's a variety of different ways that you could go here. Put on a Levi Onwuzurike. So this is close, no matter what way you cut it. ending up with almost, somewhere between 12 and 14 players for just about every team on this list. But Lions, Packers with 14, Bears with 13, Vikings with 12. So that all sounds good, but like some of these are Steven Wirtle and Jack Coco for the Packers, like the long snapper. Neither of them are good. Like Blake Lynch for the Vikings, fine player, but like nothing really to write home about all that much. So a couple of these clearly don't have maybe the value that others do. So how many starters are on this team overall? The Packers led the way with 8 starters. And again, that was 11 personnel and nickel defense. Packers had 8 of the 22 starters. The Bears and Lions each had 5, and the Vikings had 4. So the Packers led the way on this team with starting players, 8 of them, including John Runyon Jr., Josh Myers, Devontae Wyatt, Rashawn Gary, Quay Walker, Jair Alexander, Eric Stokes, and Darnell Savage. Those were their 8 starters on the team. So how about top 10 players? We went over that top 10 earlier. Packers and Lions led the way with 3 players on the top 10 list. Vikings and Bears each had 2 players on the list. So outside of the starters, where the Packers had a few more starters than the others, these 4 teams, 25 and under, pretty evenly matched overall. But I think what's surprising here is that for a team that's competing for a Super Bowl now and hasn't had a bunch of early first-round picks, they had some. The Jair Alexander and Rashawn Garys of the world were early picks in the draft. Making the Devontae Adams trade was certainly able to get them, help them get Christian Watson and got them Quay Walker as well. So they've definitely made some moves and had some earlier picks. But based on where they generally draft and how they've been competing, 3 straight 13-win seasons, you wouldn't expect them to lead the division when it came to 25 and under players. But you can make a strong argument that if you were just putting together the 25 and under roster today for each of these teams, that the Packers might just have the best 25 and under roster in the division. Is it going to stay that way? That remains to be seen. The Packers likely will win more games than probably anyone else in the division, giving them worse draft picks in that regards. And ultimately, what happens at quarterback is going to change this division for a long period of time to come. But man, I would not have guessed, just in general, right? Obviously, I know the Packers very well, so I knew they had a bunch of talent 25 and under. But I think for the outsider, if you were guessing which team, is best 25 and under, I think you would just expect, it's probably the Detroit Lions at this point, or maybe the Bears with their recent rebuild are starting to get into that conversation. But despite being the team that actually has probably the lone opportunity to win a Super Bowl in the division, the Packers also may just be set up with the best team long-term as well. That's going to do it for me today. Thank you so much for joining me. Always appreciate it. I'll be right back here tomorrow. But until next time, and as always, go Pack Go.